Mark, what's going on?
He doesn't come in peace.
He
He
doesn't. He
doesn't come
doesn't.
in peace.
Wow. Just wow. Wow. Right after this. Before we get started, don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to hit the like button. Don't forget to hit the notification bell and leave us a comment.
Comments are good.
Comments are good. We got 2 issues this week again. Absolute Superman #7, Absolute Green Lantern #2.
I would argue this is the strongest week we've had yet.
I was just going to say, this was quite a week to be an absolute DC fan. So we're going to start though with Absolute Superman, and we get the origin of Brainiac in this universe.
Yeah. It starts out with a couple of our Omega Men. Are these some of the rebels, or these are like a little band of rebels creeping into the Nevada desert facility of Lazarus, and it's not long before they start having the worst day of their lives. The first one's skin just starts melting off his body. The next one's inside start liquefying and coming out all the different orifices on him, and one by one they're just dying the most horrific of deaths. And finally, the last one's body gets hit with this lightning, and this mutates, and his hand enlarges, but it's not like it's just a thing. It hurts. He's feeling it. And that's when we get the full page reveal of who's doing it to him. And we actually get to see the full body first full appearance of Absolute Brainiac. Because up until this time, we've just seen the silhouette sitting in a chair, the voice talking through the computer. But this alien machine monstrosity is here in full force, and it's just horrific.
It is. It really is. It's truly a combination of what seems like humanoid, but then cyborg and all sorts of different things. And then he ends up he's talking to a person.
Big Hand.
Exactly. Who's on a table who looks like he's having some experiments done on him.
Yeah, it looks like he's extending his limbs potentially. His legs are cut off. His arms are cut off. You can see where the severed points are capped with metal, and you can see where the internal parts of his legs are in between them and reconnected. It's just absolutely grotesque. There's a scientific playground of what used to be a human being, and Brainiac is the mean kid with the toys.
Exactly. And we see him kind of, he's kind of talking to himself, but also talking to the person that's on the table as well at the same time. And his big inquiry is, who is Superman?
Yeah, it's kind of rattling his brain, and it's showing our first signs that this Brainiac is extremely unstable mentally.
Yeah, for lack of a better term, absolutely. And he's basically taking, these cities that he is on, he's screaming at them, trying to get who is Superman. Or I don't know how he would hear someone, but I guess maybe he would hear someone that's inside the city, because they do say something and they're like, we don't know who he is. And he basically just throws the bottle and it crashes, and assuming that everyone inside is now dead.
Yeah, the iconic bottled cities from across the universe, which, if Superman lore rings true, is like the final pieces of these entire civilizations and planet. He's just committing ultimate genocide on a whim because he wants to know who Superman is, shattering them, stepping on them, calling them morons, maggots. Again, very unstable.
Right. And so he kind of then calms down a little bit, and he says, you know what, he talking to the person on the table, he says, like, I haven't really had someone like you, talk about in my past and everything. And it's kind of like now a therapy session. And that's when we go into the origin of this Brainiac.
Yeah, many years earlier. And I like that they preface it with many years earlier, because ultimately we'll see and get an idea of just how long it is. But the actual length of time plays a part of the story in this flashback.
Right. Yeah. And, it kind of is a nice change from before.
Yeah. Now. Yeah. But it's literally the opening of the eye of this Brainiac, and he doesn't look like what we've seen so far. He is humanoid, but he's in one piece. He looks more like a traditional Brainiac. He's got the little circles on his head. He's clean kept. He looks like a Brainiac you wouldn't be afraid of if he walked up in front of you. You'd be like, all right, let's have a conversation. but he's talking to another Brainiac that's speaking of the collective, and he tells him that you are Brainiac 419,000 so many. So there's a lot of these, and he's given an assignment, a purpose, and his purpose is to shovel, and he hands him a shovel and to take out the trash, basically. And they use the word refuse.
Refuse, right? And we find out exactly what that refuse is. The refuse is actually what is left of previous Brainiacs.
Yeah, the other 400,000 of them, just a body pile, and he wants them shoveled into the incinerator processing plant right there. And so that's what this Brainiac does. He starts shoveling, and
he asks the Brainiac, "How long do I have to do this?" And he says, "Basically, for as long as you are."
For as long as you are. So yeah, we start on day one, and he starts shoveling, and these are body parts, these are whole bodies. It's literally just whatever's left of these, what can only be assumed horrific experiments and trials that the primary is putting these secondaries through. And it jumps immediately to day 2,844, and nothing has changed. He's still shoveling, but you see wear and tear on him. He looks a little dirty. He looks a little long in the face. And on day 2,844, one of the bodies in the pile that's just half a body missing its legs and stuff is still sentient and fights for its life, wants to kill. I stab, I kill. That was its purpose. Apparently, he created one that was meant to fight. Ultimately, he takes it out with the shovel, and he tells him, "I shovel." After he ends it by
don't bring a knife to a shovel fight.
No, he puts the shovel straight through its mouth, takes it out of commission, and throws it in the incinerator. Then day 13,638, he's looking very long in the tooth. You can see where he's wired up some stuff to his head and his body. It looks like he's been doing a little bit of self-tinkering with some of the parts that he comes across in this junk pile. And it's just getting worse for him and worse for him. His ears hanging off. It's just a rough job, apparently.
Right. But he's starting to have some questions about what he's doing. It only took him 13,000 days. But that's when he starts to realize, and he asks the Brainiac who originally told him, he asks him, "Am I refuse?" So basically, am I going to end up in this pile and someone else is going to end up shoveling me into this big pit?
And for context, that's 37.36 years.
Yeah. Long time to be shoveling.
Yeah, nonstop.
Mm-hmm. But it takes another 36,000 days, basically, for him to. I'm sorry.
It takes another 100 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, because on day 49,901, which is 136.7 years.
Right.
So 100 years later, he did they stop? The body stopped. He had it cleaned up, right? It was all done. He's just standing there. He's just standing there looking at the incinerator, and he looks at the door because, of course, he's closed in here. Stuff falls in one way. There's no point in him ever leaving. And he finally takes a shovel and he opens the door and starts exploring the ship, where he finds weapons, bottled cities, other Brainiacs that are in like the incubation phase. And he finds the bridge of the ship that they're on. It's now can see the cosmos for the first time. And he sees a body in the captain's chair, and he gets there, and it's the primary sitting there, shut down, deceased, holding a blaster in his hand. And he looks at it and sees the big gaping hole. It looks like the primary Brainiac took itself out. And he looks at him and says, "You are no more refuse, and I am Brainiac."
Right.
And he celebrates in this. Like, this is unstable from the get-go. He spent 50 years of just torment and torture. That's all he knew. And then just unlimited freedom and resources with this entire Brainiac ship, which the camera pans out and we get to see it in all its glory with the iconic Brainiac mold and shape to it.
Mm-hmm. And that's how the Brainiac that we know in this story came to be, who he was. Because we then flash forward again to now. He's having more discussions, and he is but he contacts what's called the Brainiac Collective, so we know that there's more than just him alive in the universe.
And it shows us they all tune in on the computer, and he's asking for like some scans, some studies. What does anyone know about Superman? I got some of this dust, this cape dust for processing, and they recognize it as having trace amounts of a far off now gone planet called Krypton in there, and there's no such thing as Kryptonians anymore, and blah blah blah. And who's calling us? So the collective is unaware of this Brainiac's existence,
right?
And he doesn't answer him. He just says what he wants to say, acts like he doesn't hear him, then shuts it off.
Yeah, it's one of those you may want to ask that question before you start telling them
Yeah. Pick up the phone. Oh, my social, and then you
Yeah,
tell
exactly.
them.
And
Like,
then who are you?
who's asking? Who's asking?
And so basically, he's able to your point, he's able to realize that he's from Krypton, or at least the part of his suit is from Krypton anyway.
All evidence points that way.
Correct. He has more. He ends up with a piece of krypton. He happens to have a piece of kryptonite as well, that he currently holds. And on a nice full page there.
Yeah, it said that through his travels through the cosmos, he actually visited the
Right.
site where Krypton once was, and he picked up some kryptonite shards out of space. But now that he has the answers, he's bored with his little science toy on the table, which again he dissected, put back together, and all kinds of things. And that poor soldier's brain is actually outside of his body, above his head, in a glass case with wires connected. And Brainiac just kind of walks by and shoves the brain over, just ends him. And his body just goes, and it's grotesque. His body goes limp and folds over the table like it's wild. And he goes over to stare at his new favorite toy, now that he knows it could be something very relevant.
Right. Exactly.
Tonight. Wow. Crazy issue.
Well, one final page that we have too is we have him basically announcing that the war line to come is going to be in Kansas.
Yeah, and we see him with his secondary project. He had the also unstable, mentally unwell Christopher Smith, aka
Right.
Peacemaker,
right.
is getting full on mechanical augmentations, and then they show you what looks like a power suit in the background. But Christopher Smith, the Peacemaker of the regular DCU, is one of many in Absolute, and he's getting Brainiac boosted against his will.
He's about to be, seems like he's about to be sent to Kansas to deal with this Superman.
So since we have kryptonite, do you think this could potentially be an Absolute Metallo situation?
It's very possible, yeah. Peacemaker could be the Absolute Metallo. So
we'll see.
We will see.
Absolutely crazy issue. It was bananas. It was
it was, and it fits in perfectly, obviously, with the character of Brainiac, but it is, it does its own thing for the Absolute Universe, which is what the best of the stories have done, is taken kind of the core of what each of the characters are, but done them in new and different and unique ways.
Very unique.
Speaking
I like the whole collective thing, because that always leaves the window open. Like, once you deal with this Brainiac issue, there's already more. There's already another one. Whether you want it to be as traditional as you want, you can have one that's even more crazy. You do. It's really wide open. Just rolling the collective out at the beginning.
Right. Speaking of doing things in unique and different ways, how about Absolute Green Lantern 2?
Insane. This really, for me, felt like 1B. Like, this really did feel like it just, not as much as a continuation as much as like a parallel almost. Like, it just kind of, I don't know. It was much needed after that first issue, which I enjoyed the first issue, but this elevated issue 1 so much.
Right. We got to see, I mean, we'll get to that, but we get to see Guy Gardner finally. But we started off almost pretty much right where we ended, and that is with Joe Mullen coming into the restaurant, the diner that they were in.
Yeah, I don't know what I expected. I think I expected just a natural face-off, a natural fight. We got the Black Hand, we got the Green Lantern, but these are two people that are friends before this event occurred, and they sit down and they're trying to make sense of what's happening. One of them's got this entity on his hand. The other one's surging with green emerald light, and they're both like, what is going on?
Right. And we flashback, although we don't really, it doesn't say that it's a flashback, but we know it's a flashback. Exactly. Because we see Abin Sur in the dome. If you might recall, at the end of the last issue, we got our first look at Abin Sur. He was just kind of hovering in the sky, and he had put a dome over the city. It was impenetrable, just as that police officer or that motorcyclist.
Yeah, he tested it.
Exactly.
It was sturdy.
And he says, basically, he says, "I am Abin Sur. I have understanding that I came to you from the Green Lanterns. I exist at the green level of light. Be without fear."
You without fear.
Right. Which interestingly too, I forgot to mention in Superman, we get our first mention of some things crossing over because we hear about the adepts of Oa, and he talks about the Black Stars
Hmm.
in the Superman issue. And if you recall, that was also the adepts of Oa and the Black Stars was on the whiteboard.
Yeah,
Um,
the Mirror Master
the
had
Mirror Master, yeah. So things are starting to slowly
come together like
come
butt
together,
cheeks.
come together like butt cheeks, exactly. So, but we see more, and we see Guy Gardner, who is mucky muck in the police force, is basically leading the charge. He basically is saying, "Hey, you know what? I don't know if you know about laws, but we have laws here." And he's like, "I understand." Or he doesn't say understand. He's, "I have understanding." That's the way he replies it.
Yeah, it's public first contact in this entire
Yeah,
universe. An alien just showed up on those worlds. Superman's just like a legend, in the little areas here and there. But this is public spaceship, alien, crowds outside freaking out, police force trying to keep the peace, and you have this just small town sheriff's department is burdened with making first contact, not knowing if this is a friend, a foe, how to proceed. Does it even understand me? What do we do? And you have people screaming, "Be careful, don't escalate, put your guns away." And there's just, you can feel the confusion in this whole entire scene that's happening. And there's this great moment where you even get, the police they're drawing on Abin Sur, and there's a moment where Guy looks back at Joe in this, I don't know, like that like there's like such a weird little bag of emotions you can kind of see on his face of like wanting to take her advice, afraid to lower the weapon. But I love that it's all just glowing green in that moment as well.
yeah, and he does decide to put down his gun, but he kind of regret. Well, he doesn't have time to regret anything because
Well, you see, he puts it down and says, "Tell us what you want." He
yeah,
he he complies, and
right,
yeah, then Adam Stewart just lights him up,
exactly.
light
Which
lights
is
him up.
which again is kind of exactly what the absolute universe is designed to do. Okay, you get this one moment of hope that Guy Gardner is gonna put his weapon down and maybe try to talk to this thing, and maybe we won't have something. And as soon as he does that, at that moment of hope, he's just blasted by Abin Sur. And let's
Yeah,
just
he's because
take him out.
all he would really tell anybody, like he is talking, Abin Sur is talking to them, but he's not having a conversation with them. He's just telling them to be without fear and that judgment will commence. He's standing there judging these people in front of him, and we don't know what for, we don't know what parameters, we don't know why, but he judged the guy and took him out.
Yeah,
Then the other
and
deputies just unload on him, and
right,
he just.
and who knows what happens when Abin Sur takes you out? Who knows where you go? What happens? Maybe we haven't seen the last of Guy Gardner.
I can tell you where the next few officers go.
Yeah,
Because the ones that open fire on him, the bullets don't even touch him.
right.
They get close. Green shield lights up,
Mm.
and then Avin just starts moving his hands. He just swings his hand and cuts one's head off. And there's
Cut the hand
bullets
off.
ricocheting on people. He swings his hand, cuts the other guy's hand off. I mean, it's violent. It's showing this. You get like these horrific pages, like where the head lands in front of the body that's dropping to its knees, and just little blood running everywhere. The little half shot of the eye, the hand getting taken off. It's wicked. People go running, screaming, but not everybody. Joe's sitting there trying to tend to people who've caught ricochets. Hal picks up one of the guns and points it at Abin Sur, standing there with two of his forearms crossed. The dude looks amazing. Like the design for Abin is just intimidating as they come. And Abin looks at him and says, "Hal Jordan, judgment is in progress." And Joe's sitting there like begging him to stop. Then John Stewart steps in front of him, like, "You saw what just happened. Put it down. Don't do this." And he drops the gun. And John looks back at him and he says his name, "John Stewart, be without fear." And in that moment, Abin just kind of spirals into green light. Whenever they illuminate green, you actually see the symbol come up on their chest as well. And he illuminates in green and just takes off into the sky. And then John runs over to help the injured around them. And then we cut back to the diner where Joe and Hal are talking about what's going on.
Yeah, and we see basically that Hal not only has that black arm, that black hand, but he's also able to manifest certain things through the black hand. He manifests the gun that he was holding before.
And he's talking about how he can feel the pull of whatever entity this is. Like he's fighting against it, that it wants him to do things. and it's taking everything in him to stop it. It keeps telling me I was right, like in that moment when he was drawn on Abin Sur. So it seems like it's pushing him toward violence, and he's having to use every bit of his willpower to stop it. And he's already made the comment that willpower doesn't seem to be enough. We have seen a couple of outbursts by him in the first issue with the officer on the side of the road and in the diner itself. That diner used to be full of people. Now it's just them. They're not really talking about that.
Right.
But they're sitting inside of a crime scene right now.
Right. So when Hal says, the blackness is telling me that I was right, we then get the title page right away, out of nowhere. And
the Abin Sur.
Right. And then we get one final scene with Joe, John, and Hal talking about what they're going to do. Basically John saying, maybe we weren't all wrong, but we have to, how do we take Abin Sur out of the equation? And we get one final page saying, I think I might have an idea.
If you look close at the ring, it's got some color reflection on it too. It looks like the whole spectrum is possibly represented down there on it.
Yep.
I'm wondering if this is something that Abin dropped, Abin manifested and left for John, or if this is something else entirely. Is Abin our villain, or the Green Lanterns, the Guardians, Oa, any of that lore that they play with? Is that going to be the protagonist for this series, and Joe is going to be kind of like a renegade fighting against him?
That's interesting you say that, because that would be almost kind of in spirit with, Abin Sur was the first person in our universe to give a ring that we saw. He basically gave him his own ring. Was that Abin Sur giving John his own ring, and then him taking off and going back? And so it'll be interesting to see. And the other thing that we know is that in the majority of the cases, usually a ring is only given when a Green Lantern dies, because there was only, at the time, when there was only one for each sector. It'll be interesting if that's part of this as well. And if so, then who died and how did John get that ring, and why did Abin Sur give it to him? If everything, and it makes perfect sense what you just said. So
yeah, does Joe have a ring? Because she just looks like she's just infected with the Emerald Light.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. But obviously, I'm a huge Green Lantern fan, so I'm all in for it anyway. But two huge issues, both just incredible in how they move the story forward. And in the case of Brainiac, just kind of makes him even more menacing and deadly. And
that instability is the craziest part for me.
Yeah. Anytime that a like you said with Absolute Superman, this in many ways seemed to be one of the best issues yet. Did not have Absolute Superman on a single panel of it.
Yeah, they make his appearances really have weight and matter when they're doing it like this.
Right, exactly.
It's not like we're starving for Superman material. There's Superman content everywhere, but we're left wanting. And that keeps me excited for the next issue.
Absolutely. And we'll be here for each and every issue. But don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to hit the notification bell. Don't forget to leave us a comment. Are you reading any of the Absolute titles? If so, which ones are your favorites? Did you read the Free Comic Book Day Absolute?
I did. We talked about it.
We did. But I'm asking then.
Watch last week's episode if you didn't. It's required reading for this absolute journey.
But that's going to be it. I am Paul. He is Mark.
We're Legion.
And you're now living Sector 2815.